Greetings, everyone. So good to see you. It's nice when a whole wall of people bow all at one time. Do that again. Everybody to everybody. That's great. Thank you. Thank you. There are other walls of people these days doing things other than bowing, so it's lovely to bow to each other. Let's also sit together and spend time settling and organizing ourselves, finding our center as best we can, or all those things that do not feel like center, knowing that our center is the nature of a Buddha and is there even when we don't feel it. And in that confidence, we sit. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Hmm. I don't know about you, but the chant has a different sort of ring to it today. Vast is the robe of liberation. There are so many things that seem vast that don't feel like liberation unfolding these days. Um, and to have confidence that there's a formless field of benefaction that we're being held by and in is really important. Um, and that wearing these teachings by continuing to practice reminds us of unity, something we're struggling with, the one true nature that brings us together. I'm teasing a little bit with Jessica as we came on this morning and we're preparing. I said, with my uh, dark sweater, my rocketsuit, you can hardly see it. Like it doesn't show up. Um, and it's like maybe I'm stretching it, but the darkness of what's going on these days is like the Dharma. Can you still see it? Can you still find it? Is it still there? So that's some of what I want to speak about today, a little bit. Just as a way maybe to encourage us all or whatever. But I, the most common question, and you might imagine the most common question that I'm receiving from folks these days is, what does our practice say about how to manage everything that's happening? What am I supposed to say? In response to this overwhelming a longing for direction and in these really fast moving shocking times and everybody's caught in what in another presentation I did a while back I called a compound word terror rage, this combination terror rage. And also, what am I supposed to say when I'm caught up in the midst of it, just like you? um, what I'm hoping to say today, I mean, I hope it's encouraging, um, maybe even inspiring, I don't know, and maybe even a little bit helpful. When I was teaching with Donna Martin in the UK in the beginning, when I first went to Sheffield to assist in the Hakomi training there, we would stay in a wonderful um, home. And then each morning we would get ready and we would walk through neighborhoods. Took about 10 or 15 minutes to walk to a church where had rented a space. And along one of the main roads, um, there was a beautiful old home with a wall and a garden, as usual, you would see in an English home. And there was a sign that indicated that this was not just a home, but an office. And, and the person, I don't remember the person's name, but I remember what their sign said. It said, Dilemma Consultancy. This person was a dilemma consultant. I loved that. I've never forgotten it, of course. It's like, I want one of those. um, I don't know. Maybe you've seen this, Catherine. It's going down towards Hunter's Bar. There's, right there. There's Because, I don't have answers to these immense problems of suffering we see all around us. I don't know what to do. Um, I carry what I always carry, and we just chanted about how we wear it, which is confidence. I do have confidence in our practice. And what I have confidence in the practice for is to shape us in ways that, and open us in ways, and encourage us in ways that will allow us to come to creative solutions over time. In other words, to become the kinds of people who can respond with right action. Practice doesn't actually, the Dharma isn't a list of solutions. It offers things that will help shape us and mature us so we can discover and enact wholesome solutions. We become those kinds of people. It doesn't offer us the solutions. Um, but this doesn't mean our job um, isn't to continue to practice, certainly, but it isn't, I don't think, to just preach what is good and right, to say this is the right, but, you know, hang on, there's more about that to come. Now, as many of you know, there are many spiritual teachers who have faced just as terrible times as we're in. Um, and you have your list, I'm sure. Some of the more contemporary ones, Thich Nhat Hanh came up during the difficulties in Vietnam and was witness to and impacted by so many of the things that were intractable and painful and destructive for a very long time with his family and his people and his work there. Of course, the Dalai Lama and the conflict with China and Tibet, which he was expelled or left, flee for his life a long time ago and has never gotten to go back. And this is not solved yet. And yet he continues. In the United States, it was the Reverend Martin Luther King and his his struggles, and of course in India, Mahatma Gandhi, on whose teachings these many of these other teachers um, have continued their work or tried um, of nonviolence, but very powerfully transformative, just part of our practice. And just last week or whenever it was, not week before, um, the Reverend Buddha, also in the National Cathedral in the United States, who was part of the inauguration, spoke powerfully in these ways. Um, some of you are familiar with that, I'm sure. Her theme was unity, and the foundations were honoring the inherent dignity of every person. We just chanted something about finding the one true nature, honoring the inherent dignity of every person. Her other second foundation was honesty in private and public discourse, and her third was humility, stepping away from absolutes and realizing we don't always have the answers. So these are just examples, but a lot of people have faced what we're facing in their own way and their own time. So they show us what's possible. It is possible, although some of them paid with their lives. It's also true. Some more things to remember. I know I'm just kind of going through some historical things here, but it's important, I think, to remember. Just 2 days ago, on January 27th, there were very powerful services and gatherings to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. Some of you know about this. Um, the survivors who remain were children at that time. And Michael Borstein, who was one of those children who was liberated now in his 80s, he says, nothing will be easy about returning to Auschwitz 80 years later. After I was liberated, this commemoration will be the last of its kind. Most of them are dying, but we'll be here. And the question is, will you stand with us? So this is a kind of a question. Will you stand with, what will you stand with? Um, Another of the survivors, Joanna Larks, who's 94, um, she said, and this is really, I took this to heart. She said, it doesn't do any good for our heart to come back. It doesn't do any good for your heart or your mind for anything, but it's necessary. It's necessary for the world to know. So this is my point. Just because we don't know what to do doesn't mean it's unnecessary to do what we're doing. It's necessary, even though you don't know. And there's this Sanskrit word, smriti, which in Pali we know more as sati, like in the Satipatthana Sutra, the sutra on the four foundations of mindfulness. Sati, the word we translate as mindfulness, literally means that which is remembered. Mindfulness is about remembering our true nature, remembering the breath, remembering what it's like to be a human, coming back to remember. And in my sort of historical musings, um, there was a service just this past December, um, at the National Cathedral called Remembering Matthew Shepard. The young gay man who was murdered in a brutal hate crime in 1998. And his ashes were entrusted to the cathedral 20 years after his death in the early 2000s. And prior to that, his parents didn't have a place to put them, anywhere public because they were afraid the sacred spot would be unsafe and would be available to vandals or other hate crimes. So until the National Cathedral accepted them. And so on October 26, 2018, the Reverend then, Gene Robinson, said, gently rest in this place. You're safe now. Matt, welcome home. It's hard to say. And on December 24th, just this past December 2024, in the 20th anniversary service called Remembering Matthew Shepard, remembering Matthew Shepard, at the National Cathedral, they stated, here in the safety of the cathedral, he has a home and pilgrims have a place to honor a young man who changed the nation. Did his death mean anything? Did it make a difference? I don't know. But we still have to remember that which is remembered. We have to remember. And remember that a few months ago, I spoke in inquiry about the classical image of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion with all the heads and all the arms, because as that Bodhisattva saw all the suffering in the world, her head exploded. Don't you feel like that sometimes? And that became a multiplied capacity, but literally, head exploded in a moment of discouragement. So I don't know about you, but I can easily slide into feelings of hopelessness and even helplessness in the face of things that are occurring in the moment. So I'm just avowing. And this can be really exhausting, especially if you're the one that everybody says, what do I do? What do I do? Um, and it's easy to get lost in the narratives I create and in the news that I can't allow to shape my experience if I get lost in that. And just witnessing all the unbelievable realities and horrors all around us. And in the face of all this, over and over, I'm asked to be the face and the voice for a Buddhist informed thing about wholesome response to suffering. What do we do? So I'm going to refer you to two things. Please go to these two things if you'd like to. One is the Buddhist Peace Fellowship, which has been around for a long time. And also, by the way, Buddhist Action Now through Appamada, you can find these things. So the Buddhist Peace Fellowship, and I'm just going to read their words. They say, whose purpose is to serve collective liberation through connecting Dharma to the current moment. That's what we're asking about. We convene spiritually and politically engaged individuals from multiple lineages, Buddhist and otherwise, to explore practices to be in wise and compassionate relationship to ourselves, each other, and movements. So it's well stated. It's a powerful organization. It's been around a long time. The other one, which also you'll find a connection to, I'm sure, in Buddhist action now, is the Zen Peacemaker Order. Um, Here are their words. Our mission is to realize our oneness and relieve suffering through contemplative social action. We envision an enlightened society where suffering is transformed into wisdom and compassion, and all beings live in harmony and are relieved of the afflictions of hunger, war, and disease. Spirituality and service are tools we use to help all beings find freedom, regardless of race, religion, ability, gender, or nationality. So these are the kind of things that are well stated and the things we like to hear because they accord with our our way and they give me something to direct you to. Um, so please understand, I'm not complaining. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me when I say these things. But I am asking you to hear me and to appreciate my situation just as I do my best to hear you and appreciate your situations. We're in this together. And it's way too easy to get caught in unwholesome situations like, some of the games I learned in my early training in transactional analysis. Some of you, you know, these like, poor me. You can get in this, oh, poor, all these terrible things are happening, or ain't it awful? And we just talk about how terrible it is, or how terrible certain people are. Very easy to get lost there and not come out. It's easy to simply move around the drama triangle, feeling like the victim, and then feeling like the persecutor, and then feeling like the rescuer, but not. If you do that, we don't have a chance to face all of these parts of ourselves, and we get endlessly caught in them. And there are a true victim, certainly, to certain things. And there are times in which it's useful to rescue and it's time to be powerful. But I'm talking about the psychological and social ways we get caught that's unwholesome. So we have examples of teachers who have done this. We have examples of what it's like to remember. And we have organizations which are actually aligned with this intention. I don't think it's useful necessarily to just teach about wholesome actions. You know a lot about it. If I just said, oh, now here's the things that are wholesome, it would be just repeating what you know. We don't have to explore this as much as we do have to explore unwholesome reactivity to unwholesome actions and to remember. Do some of you remember that line from my election day talk where I said, when we speak only to the choir, we turn our back on the larger congregation? So if I was to talk about all the good things that practice does, I'd be speaking to the choir. So allow me just for a moment, if you will, to turn in both directions and and please forgive me for my personal expressions of anguish. I need to speak for some of my parts that do not usually speak publicly. So I'm acknowledging that's what this is. And I'm going to go through some teachings and I'm going to say what I don't think I need to teach you about, but what's actually happening. One, I don't need to remind anyone here, you're the choir, okay, that being wise and compassionate is better than being petty and cruel. This is obvious, or so it seemed for most of my life. But apparently, when vicious narcissism, overt lying, and blatant violence is celebrated in public, many people begin to miss the point, or worse, want it. So please remember, Next, I don't need to suggest to you that taking refuge in the triple treasure, in Buddha, in wakefulness, and the Dharma, and the way that wakefulness moves in the Sangha, in our community, I don't need to remind you that taking refuge is a wholesome thing to do. You already know it's a wholesome turn, which you're willing to take because that's why you're here. But many people don't seem to be interested. Apparently, there's another kind of homecoming, a magnetic draw to another illusory refuge, the abuse of power, cruel dominance, and dark cynicism. And all of this comes with a plan. Burn down everything that's good. So remember. I also don't need to list the Bodhisattva precepts because you're all committed to an ethic of mindful, diligent care, which steers us away from, too much lying, stealing, hurting, intoxication, and abuse of sexual energy, the five kind of basics. But apparently these things are actually okay, even applauded or completely meaningless if you worship a leader who violates them all with impunity and shockingly with immunity. So our hearts begin to go dark. So remember. And I don't need to repeat the Bodhisattva vow, which we've chanted countless times, the practice of liberating each other from unnecessary suffering, seeing through the many veils of delusion, using every opportunity to open ourselves to a larger, kinder space and embodying that big heart and mind as a Buddha would do. You know this. And you do your best to embody it. I know, because I know you. But apparently, from many perspectives, all beings are not worth saving. Delusion is actually a weapon and can be used to manipulate people. Dharma gates can be booby traps, so we feel naive and foolish when we take them. And embodying a life of wakefulness somehow gets turned into a negative phrase of derision and criticism, a scornful nickname for being weak and stupid. So remember, if we only teach about wholesome actions to each other and even to other people, we might miss another voice which is crucial. And the assumption that many of us hold, that I've held most of my life, is that all you have to do is clearly point out what's unwholesome, which is blatantly mean or violent or false, and people would go, oh, and then turn toward the good. But turns out it's a naive assumption and dangerous. And encouraging wholesomeness is the right thing to do. It's just not always effective. It's not the only thing to do. And if we're not effective, then it's not right action. One of my teachers used to say, being right in the wrong place or the wrong situation is just being righteous. And that's not an effective strategy, especially when you meet this sort of intentional ill will or evil. Remember, Manjushri, that archetypal image of wisdom in our tradition, the Bodhisattva wisdom, carries a sword. Now, not to hurt or kill, that's not the point. But it's powerful, and he's riding a lion, like on top of this fierceness. He remains steady, and he still cuts through delusion. So our job is to remember, to practice seeing through delusion with discernment, to meet our unwholesome actions and thoughts and feelings, to understand their nature and to be creative in responding. Back in the day, again, and when I was studying transactional analysis, in terms of the parent ego state, there was what was called, a critical parent and a nurturing parent. But there was something called an okay critical parent. Like when your kid runs into the street and his car's coming, you scream and say stop. Or when someone's going to hurt you, you scream and say don't, no. And that's a compassionate response. Maybe the things we do to make ourselves feel better are not that helpful sometimes. Maybe we just being nice is not a very useful strategy in the face of attack. And maybe we need to feel the terror and the grief and the rage and the impotence more fully, not in a masochistic way. I don't mean that, but to not try to just fix it or override it. Maybe we need to listen and look and not turn away. And so, which is what these Holocaust survivors and others are saying, so we can better embody wholesome qualities. So we'll have the energy, the living vitality to hold steady in the face of it all. And this is really complex, and there aren't easy solutions, and I don't have the solutions. But whatever happens, practice doesn't change. When we get caught in the self-centered dream, we're going to suffer. And if we cling to limited self-centered beliefs, we'll continue to suffer and maintain that kind of dream. And if we have the courage to face life as it is, not as we hope it'll be, or the way it should be, especially for others, then we might learn how to best be courageous and creative and responsive. And if we remember again and again and find our place among things, no matter how they appear, compassion is a natural energy and a natural response, full of kindness and full of fierceness. So be curious, be grateful, be willing, and remember. That's what I have to say about this today. Thank you for listening and tolerating my bit of being on a soapbox. Because it's a place I can direct my energy even when I don't know the answer to these things. I think that's enough. There's more I could say, but that's probably enough. And I don't think it's useful for us to debate political things. Of course, this is a Dharma activity, or play Ain't It Awful, or Poor Me. But if there are practice questions or just things that are important to say or ask, or if you have feedback for me, if you think I'm off somewhere, or please say, oh, Stephanie, I haven't heard from you in a long time.
Good morning, friend, or good afternoon, I guess.
Great to see you.
It's good to see you too. So I have a question about something you were talking about during your talk, and you mentioned the phrase, part of our vow is to relieve unnecessary suffering. And so my question that came up immediately when you said that, how do we know what is unnecessary?
That's a really good question.
Good, because I need an answer.
What I mean when I say that isn't that we're judging. I'm saying there's a whole lot of suffering that we can't do anything about. We get ill, we get old, we die, things happen. It's just in the necessary meaning, the ordinary pains and things that just come with life. It's the second arrow I'm talking about,
Okay.
where then we create suffering on top of life as it is, based on our reactions and our responses to life.
Yeah.
And so you know about this. That's all I'm
Yeah.
talking about. When I
Yeah.
say unnecessary suffering, it's not a judgment. It's that second arrow part, which we have something to do with. I can't do anything about certain things.
Right.
I can't do anything about being 73 years old, take care of myself, but I could do something about complaining about it or.
So I guess because I deal with taking care of my mom, and that's such a big part of my practice right now, I have a lot of compassion for her suffering. And yet I see that so much of her suffering is brought on by her attitude, her sense of herself. And what I'm wondering is there a place? Is there a place for my practice with that where I can relieve some of that suffering that she brings upon herself.
You may not. What you can do is offer yourself in ways that you hope are wholesome opportunities for her to, but you're not going to talk her out of that stuff.
Right.
Her age, you're not going to change her basic attitude towards life. You know these
Right.
things. That's not going
Yes.
to change.
Yes.
But you also don't have to feed certain things and offer alternatives. And she might take it, she might not. But
Okay.
you know,
That
do,
that's
do what you
helpful.
can gently and
Mhm.
with patience and encouragement. Well, the way I think about, I see someone who's suffering a lot, either someone close like that or even someone in a public space that's doing a lot of damage. I think, well, if they weren't suffering, they wouldn't act like that.
Right.
And
Yeah, and
so,
you did say something to me about that many, many years ago
mhm,
about someone in my life that was really suffering from depression. And you said this person worked really hard to get where they are. It's not your job to take it away.
right.
And it was like, wow, mind blown.
Yes.
Okay, that helps. Thank you so much, Flint.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Stephanie. I appreciate it
Thank you.
coming forward.
Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, I think I'm unmuted. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have this little box in front of me, but I'll ignore it. Um, I want to thank you, and I want to kind of remind you for something you taught us. When you gave the election speech, I'm not sure, but one of the things you said, and I actually shared it with some people at the gym this morning who were really sharing their suffering and despair, which I also avow I'm there. One of the things you said is that we can find moments to interrupt the damage, and every moment matters.
Uh-huh. Right.
And I think that is just so important, whether it's through donating or volunteering or educating, or
Mhm.
I'm kind
Little
of
things.
yeah, I'm kind of hyper vigilant for it now. You know, to see if I can make sure that people know about the upcoming election in
Yes.
Wisconsin and things like that. I think it makes me feel like I have some agency in this time
Sure.
when everything's falling apart.
Remember our sphere of influence and the things you can do in that sphere, because there are
Right,
many things you can't do anything about.
right,
And then the job of a bodhisattva is to turn each moment or each thing a little bit more towards freedom. And that's what you're
right,
talking about. So
right. And you taught us that, and I want to thank you.
I think quite welcome. Polish our little corner of the universe.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding us.
Hi, Flint.
Hi, Chris.
It was on the tip of my tongue to say the most distressing thing about the current era, and that's not possible because everything is equally distressing.
It's all interwoven too.
Yes, it is. Um, I've recognized for a long time how deeply the gaslighting and the propaganda has gone into me.
Hmm.
I never imagined this could happen. I always
Hmm.
thought my mind is too strong for that.
Hmm.
Well, okay, so I'm eating humble pie. Um, but it's come upon me now so hard since what has it been 6 months since the inauguration, um, that I feel like I have to withdraw. I have to somehow learn to not take in the propaganda. I have to somehow learn to internally deconstruct it. And I'm just setting out on this and I'm really feeling pretty lost. All I know is the way things are, it's not good.
Well, you're doing the first thing, which is avowing the situation. You can see what's happening. You have mindful. That's your first remembering. And then you know how, for example, in internal family systems, we speak about unblending and stepping back from things, and then so we can turn toward them in a different way. You don't want to just be caught in it. It's not useful to turn
Yeah.
your back on it. And so sometimes it's like maybe it's time for you to go into your little monastery and step back for a little bit and disconnect and unplug from things because you know what's happening. You're not unaware. You know what's happening and give yourself some space so that you can turn back in a different way because you're a thoughtful person and you want to do that. You just might need some space.
Clearly I do. And I'll just have to kind of stumble my way through that, as with everything.
And when you do connect, make sure it isn't with the next blog or podcast or news thing. It's with another, Dharma
Another,
friend who can
yes,
just be some. You need to be nourished.
yeah,
Some
I
good.
do.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing it up. That's a good one. People share it, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Darcy.
Hi, Flint.
Hi, Darcy.
Thank you so much for this. I think I needed it. I think we needed it.
What is it that you needed out of it?
The fierceness.
Yeah, the speaking from the first place. Hmm.
Yeah. Thanks for letting those parts speak that sometimes are so willing to, just kind of stand in the background. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's a
And you know
hard
what?
line to walk, to not be. My job isn't to be overtly political, but it's also not a good idea to keep my mouth shut.
And I don't think you were being that.
Okay, good.
You were reminding us of what you've told us over and over. And you know what that is? No matter what. That's what I kept hearing today as you were starting, and that's what's really helped me get through,
Yeah, even if the worst happens.
even if the worst happens. And what we're experiencing now may not be the worst, but our practice and our vow is no matter what.
That what I meant by even if the worst happens, like you lose a child.
Yes.
Yeah,
And we this is what we have to come back to after
yeah,
our head kind of takes a break from exploding for a minute, and then this is what we have to come back to. And you've
yeah,
fought it all along. You've done such a good job, and we needed that fierceness to remind us this is tough, and this is what we're called to do.
yeah.
This is what we're called to do. I had, yeah. I was also just going to mention, so after my Qigong practice, this lovely group of people, is a therapist saying, everybody's a mess right now, and everybody wants me right now, and then another gal who just so earnestly said, she says, I just don't understand, she starts. And I guess what I want to know is, how do I respond? Yeah. But I think I know how now. I think I do. I think for me, we don't have to understand it. And that's not the point. And you know what? After your surgery on Thursday, I'm going to bring you a bowl of soup. How about that? And that's what I told her.
And say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I know," and give me a hug.
Yeah, exactly.
That's about it.
We just have to keep at it.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. I liked seeing you all wrapped up. I know where you're sitting, and so it was nice to see you wrapped up.
Yeah. So just last night, I read this short article by Norman Fisher in
in Lion's Roar that came out in 2022, and it was about exactly this.
Oh, I should have
And
referenced that.
and because he was asked to write, how do you take care of difficult emotions? How do you take care of yourself? So here's the last two short paragraphs. I want to read them because I
Yeah.
talk about them. This practice takes a certain amount of patience and faith. Patience because sometimes it doesn't go perfectly. So I have to bear with it and not get frustrated. And faith because I have to have faith that the practice will work to keep me safe and sane. Fortunately for me, patience and faith are not something you're either born with or not. They develop naturally as you keep practicing. And since my practice is long and steady, I have enough patience and faith to keep me going. I can be human without being overcome by my humanity. In a world where so much is disturbing, I can be disturbed without being disturbed.
Oh, there you go. Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah,
We
it
hear
was,
these, we can echo and help each other.
yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Flint. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
And Mary.
There it goes.
Thank you for your sharing today. I can join with you in all of this about the heated emotions and what's turbulent inside. And for me, one of the things that, like, just listening to you is I have parts that have kind of learned, I have more of that Kuan Yin or whatever, that compassion, and to embrace more of that Manjursi fierceness of, like, I was actually just talking about, I have a toddler from a nephew, and like children, like they'll run in, it's like, I hate you, mommy, I hate you, mommy, I hate you, right?
Mhm.
And watching that happen of like, oh, so you hate me, all right, and just like allowing the expression of that in its fullness, and then
Mhm.
to see it dissipate and then be like, oh, come here and snuggle. It's almost like I realize I have parts that are like, don't be this way, don't be angry, don't
Mhm. Mhm.
and witnessing you in that fierceness, it's like, can we granting, sometimes I say allowing for a little R&R, and by that I mean like rant and rave.
That's good. Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
in the third noble truth, when the Buddha used the word nirodha, we talked about this. He talked that word ni means an earth bank and rhoda means sound. Like he was talking about an image of a fire. Like when all this stuff happens,
Yeah.
you need practice builds the earth bank. Because if you put dirt on the fire, you lose all your energy. You don't have anything.
Hmm.
But if you don't have the earth bank, it can burn everything. How
Right.
do you contain it? Just like the toddler who finally, is after you. And if you hold them really strong, they fight and they scream until they start crying,
Right. Yeah.
finally collapse underneath it. And that's what we have. We have the rage and the terror all connected in our bodies.
Okay. Because that is that terror, which again, so many parts are coming in. Don't be afraid. It's like, why not? This is terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, as they say, we pull up our big girl pants or big boy pants and have to go forward, with it. We
Yeah.
have to do something. But that's and practice with our as our guide.
Okay. Okay. It's and just as I say, from my causes conditions family, it's, to be the sweet, oh, we'll get, sort of, and yeah, to have a little tantrum
Yeah.
with rocks around and the sangha around, and
That's right. That's
that's,
right.
yeah. Okay. Okay. And that's
Thank you
really,
so much.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So let's remind ourselves now with our shared voices. Remember, caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Thank you very much, everyone. Be loving, be fierce. Remember,
Thank you so much, Flint, and thank you, everyone. Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity, and your support makes a huge difference. There's a link for contributions on the website, and I'll also post it in the chat. And please do note if you'd like your contribution to go to any teacher in specific, like Flint. Now you are welcome to stay afterwards if you'd like to hang out on the porch. Bye-bye. Thank you.